What's up, everybody? Welcome to the penultimate World Cup preview here on Touchline Talk. Before I jump in, as always, wanted to take a moment to say be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss all of the content I'll be putting out on YouTube during the World Cup. You can also find my written work on Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com, as well as on Medium. Okay, as I said, penultimate World Cup preview in Group H. South Korea. This is South Korea's 11th World Cup appearance. I'm not going to list all of them. Just know that it is 10 straight appearances dating back to 1986. For the last, 3 decades, South Korea have been at the World Cup. It is the case once again in 2022. Best finish for South Korea was 2002. They reached the semifinals during that World Cup. They sort of shared hosting duties with Japan. So sort of riding that home field advantage, if you will, that wave of momentum, being on their home soil in familiar surroundings with all of those tremendous fans supporting them, got all the way to the semifinals in 2002. To get to Qatar, South Korea entered in the second round of Asian Football Confederation qualifying. They were in a group with Lebanon, Turkmenistan, and Sri Lanka. North Korea withdrew from this group, so it was just those four teams. They won that group to get to the next round, where they were placed in a group with Iran, Iraq, Lebanon again, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates. South Korea finished second in that group, both Asian Football Confederation third round groups. The top two teams automatically qualified. So South Korea was the second of two teams to automatically qualify from that third round group. In terms of key players, starting with Hwang Hee-chan, 7 goal involvements in qualifying, 3 goals, 4 assists. He was the only player on this team with more than 2 assists during qualifying. He had 2 starts at the last World Cup, 5 goals and 30 appearances for Wolves last season. He originally joined Wolves from Red Bull Leipzig in the Bundesliga on loan. That loan was then made permanent. So Hwang Hee-chan has experience in the Bundesliga, in the Premier League, playing against high-level opposition. He is kind of the secondary goal scorer to the next guy that you have to talk about when you're talking about South Korea. But I did want to highlight him not only because of the numbers he put up in qualifying, not only because he is one of the more impressive South Korean players in terms of where he is playing in his resume, but also because of the situation regarding the star of this team, one of the biggest international stars in this sport, and that is Sung Heung-min. Before I get into all of the accolades with Sung Heung-min, he is still recovering from that facial injury he suffered while playing for Tottenham. So still trying to figure out exactly what kind of availability he's going to have during this tournament, how early he's going to be able to play. And so having another goal scorer, another guy in the Premier League to lead that attack all of a sudden became incredibly important for South Korea. So that was the other reason I really wanted to highlight Hwang Hee-chan. Now on to Son Heung-min. Not only did Son tie for the Golden Boot last season in the Premier League, he scored 5 more non-penalty goals than any other player in that league. And that's a fact that I feel like got overlooked in all of this. That he's not Tottenham's penalty taker because that's Harry Kane. And he's still tied for the most goals in the league with Mo Salah, who takes Liverpool's penalties. What he did last season was absolutely remarkable. He is just 2 goals away from being in sole possession of third place on the South Korea all-time goal scoring chart. He has 3 World Cup goals already to his name, 1 in 2014, 2 in 2018. He is, as I mentioned before, not only the star of this team, but outside of, Messi and Ronaldo, arguably the biggest international superstar, and Neymar would fall into that category too. But outside of the obvious ones, his international pedigree, his international stardom is right up there with anybody else you can think of. He is a superstar similar to, BTS in South Korea. It's kind of Son Heung-min and BTS in terms of your just rabid fandom. And of course, he also has all of the support of the Tottenham fans. He is a huge deal. And it's not all that often you get a player of this profile carrying a country like this. And so obviously he is he is the name to know on this team. And as I was sort of looking into this more, it just seems like nobody exactly knows when he's going to be available and what role he's going to play in this tournament. So that is something definitely to keep an eye on. But Sun said, I wouldn't have missed this for anything. I was going to be here. And it does seem like he is going to be able to play at some point. The question is more, when is that going to be? Third guy to highlight here, Kim Min Jae. Kim Min Jae had himself a qualifying. Led the team in games played, led the team in games started, led the team in minutes played. And he also contributed the goal and 2 assists from his center back position. He is just also having himself a season for Napoli. It's kind of all coming together for him here. He was basically the replacement for Senegal star Kalidou Koulibaly. He came over from Fenerbahce, did not exactly have a bunch of impressive clubs he had played for that it was clear this was sort of headed this direction, and he was an obvious, upgrade over Kalidou Koulibaly, things like that. But he has gotten to Napoli. He has been outstanding. They have been outstanding. He has been part of that. He is one of these guys, not just him, but Napoli had to replace an awful lot this season. And the players who have come in, Kim Min Jae at the center back position and all those attackers, have been way better than I expected them to be. And arguably, maybe not even arguably, just flat out improvements over some of the better players in that club's storied history, which is really remarkable to think about. So, again, this is a South Korea team without that many guys who are really, really productive, established, regular starters on the best teams in the world. Certainly Sung Heung-min is there. Kim Min Jae is the other one. It kind of happened very quickly for him. But he enters this World Cup in a very, very good spot in terms of his club situation and what he is doing for that Napoli team that has been so, so good so far this season. In terms of a breakout star, Sung Min Kyu is my choice. Had an assist on his international debut in June 2021. He played in 7 qualifiers. He spent his entire professional career in the South Korean K-League 1, the top division in South Korea. He had a 10-goal, 6-assist season in 2020. This is a South Korea team that is very, very experienced. A lot of these players are, coming from the 2018 World Cup team, are in their mid-20s, their early 30s. So there weren't that many players that fit this description for me, because a big part of this is I want somebody under the age of 25 who hasn't necessarily established themselves at the club level and sort of reached the pinnacle of their career yet. The idea is this is somebody who could turn this opportunity into a really good tournament that then catapults that move that takes them to the next level in their career. So, not all that many players to choose from for South Korea, but Sung Min Kyu is somebody who does fit that description. The bottom line is sort of all connected and pretty basic for the South Korea team. The reason for optimism is, as much as you sort of view Sun as one of the primary faces of a national team in terms of the most important players in the international game, you're thinking Sadio Mane at Senegal, Robert Lewandowski at Poland, those kind of players where there is that one superstar trying to put most of the team on their back. And certainly that's the case. There were also 16 South Korean players who scored during qualifying. And a decent amount of the goals Sun scored came from the penalty spot. So it is not like he was carrying this thing by himself throughout qualifying. There were plenty of other players chipping in. And so even outside of the injury, to me, that is the reason for optimism. It's not a one-man show. Now, to the extent that you can be carried by one player, South Korea is carried by Son Heung-min. But I also mentioned Hwang Hee-chan. That's a recent development in terms of where he's gotten in his career since the last World Cup. He's in a much higher level of competition now. There are other really good players on this team, other players capable of chipping in with goals and assists and taking some of that pressure off of Son and allowing and being able to take advantage of the attention that you know he is going to receive. So that's my reason for optimism is all hope is not lost if Son has a bad tournament for whatever reason. Now, the big question is Son's health. What kind of impact is he able to make? When can he make his debut? What does it look like when he actually takes the field, assuming he does at some point? Because the reality is this team is not, he has to carry this team out if they're going to get out of this group. And that is as much about the opposition you are facing in terms of the teams in this group, particularly Portugal and Uruguay, where you need everything to go right to be able to knock off one of those teams over a 3-game span. And every best case scenario for the South Korea team involves Son Heung-min being at the center of it. So this is the story with the South Korean team. It was one of the stories sort of heading into this World Cup on the list of players who may or may not have been able to make it. It was kind of coming down to the wire because of these injuries they suffered in the few weeks right before the tournament. Son was right at the top of the list because of what he means to the South Korea team. Thankfully, he is here. It's a facial injury, so it's not like it's a hamstring or something that can continue to bother you, assuming it's healing. It just seems like it's kind of a thing that needs time. So that is also good that, you just saw what happened with Sadio Mane, where he tried to give it a go and didn't even get to the tournament itself before he was ruled out. I feel like Son's situation is much, much better than that because of the nature of the injury. Now, of course, you've got a risk of re-injuring it if he gets into another collision and ends up getting knocked in the face again. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But this is the story for this team. He is the face of South Korea, of course in a soccer sense, but also kind of in a representing this country to the rest of the world. You're thinking BTS and you're thinking Son Heung-min. So I do think in a perfect world, if everything goes right and if he's able to play and they find a way to hang in there until he features, or if he's able to feature right away, there is a world. I do like this team, and there is a world in which they can go through and sort of take advantage if somebody slips up. But the longer you keep him out, that becomes much, much, much more difficult to do, and they're already in a tough spot because of the reality of this group. So it's as much about the circumstances they're in as this team itself and me not thinking they're capable of going through, because I really do think in another group they would have a great chance of getting to the round of 16. But this is the difference between going through Asian qualifying and playing in a World Cup, right? Level of competition increases dramatically. We're going to see what they're able to do. I'm looking forward to watching this team. It's going to be a difficult task to get out of this group, but there's always that chance, and it's always a special thing to see Son Heung-min get to play for his national team on the biggest stage. Everybody wants him here. Everybody is glad he is here. He's such a just likable guy. And so he is South Korea in many ways. We will see what kind of role he is able to play. That is the South Korea preview. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.